Welcome to PM Express Business Edition. From May 1, the Ghana Revenue Authority will go ahead and start implementing the tax on electronic transfers. But how ready is the institution itself to implement this levy? And what about the public? What about tightening all the loose ends and getting the public well appreciated or educated on all these issues to ensure that indeed we have a smooth takeoff of this tax? And what about those concerns about whether there's a double taxation and whether people are going to be taxed twice? And also, what about the exemptions that are within the system when this tax takes off? Well, we are grateful to have the Commissioner General of the Ghana Revenue Authority, Reverend Dr. Mishida Osomwa, to walk us through or tell us how ready the authority is and about educating the public on this. Reverend Doctor, thank you so much for your time, and I do appreciate it so much. And how are things?
You're most welcome, George.
How are things going, shaping up at the authority for this tax that will be start implementing or take off from May 1? And let me get some clarification. May 1 is supposed to be a holiday. So, per the laws, how does this thing work when you're going to implement this?
I think that, okay, so thank you very much, and my pleasure to be on your program, and also a good evening to your viewers. We are working around the clock and putting every effort that we have to put in to ensure that we are able to get this tax rolling on the 1st of May. As you are aware, it was passed not quite long ago, and before then we had also done some groundwork and getting a lot of people involved. As far as 1st May is concerned, this is a tax that runs whether it is a holiday or a working day. And so because it's based upon the transaction that you do, we are still taking off on the 1st of May in respect of the fact that it's a holiday.
Even for businesses that will not be working and all the rest. I mean, when it comes to these tax collections, what's the best practice, or what does the law say in respect to all these things?
Because this is a transaction, based off of tax, it is based upon whether you are doing the transaction or not. So it's not like whether we have found you working on a particular day, but once the transaction is being done on a particular day, on a particular time, the tax then applies. And so it is made basically a transaction. That's why we talk about E-levy, which is a transaction type of levy. When the transaction takes place, then the levy is charged. So that's the way we are going to do.
Help us right now as we speak right now in terms of the processes. Where has the Ghana Revenue Authority gone with respect to the necessary stakeholder engagement, the necessary test runs and all the rest as we speak right now?
I think that before even the tax was approved by Parliament, and then we got the President's signature as well, the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Communication and then other government agencies were involved as policymakers to do the various education, including the town halls and things like that. And once the law had been passed, we've also come into it more effectively in terms of doing the education. And you will find out that in the last 1 week or two, almost every morning, every evening, we are on one platform or another, either in terms of the radio or TV. I know we have been on your platform, Joy FM Multimedia, in various of your radio stations and TV stations. And not only that, there are other radio stations that we have been. There are other publications that we have come out with. There are social media handles that we have also come out with. So, but the education must continue. It will not end even when the levy starts. It has to continue for a long time, because constantly people must understand what the E-levy is about. Constantly people understand how it is calculated. Constantly people must be educated to be able to reason with us as to why it is important to have this levy. And so the work has started and it will continue. We are also not dependent upon only the radio and TV as or the media. We are also doing one-on-one with various organizations and various stakeholders and educating other people who can also become like doing a kind of train-the-trainer type of system where you train other people, educate them, then they can also educate others. We are also getting the Ministry of Information, the Information Service Department, and other such agencies to also get involved, so that in all the various communities and the small towns and villages, they can also pass the information on. So there's a lot that we are doing as far as education is concerned.
I've gone through the Act, and I've had an opportunity to also be in some meetings, and I just oppose that with concerns out there, and it appears that you may have to double up when it comes to education.
I think, as I said, we will definitely have to keep on educating. And there are a number of initiatives that we have put across there that we are doing to educate. And so I don't doubt the fact that the education needs to be increased. And we are actually doing that. And we expect that between now and the 1st of May, there will be several engagements like what we are doing today. And then after 1st May, that I said, it will not be the end. We'll continue to do more education. Yes, we do a very extensive education. There are jingles that we have put together that are coming out. There are TV adverts that are coming out. There are social media, adverts that we have also put in place that are also started coming out.
So if I go with what was captured in the Act and help me out education here on some one-on-one, that is 1.50, that will be the levy on electronic transfers.
Yes.
That is on mobile money transfers and other. Can you just help me out in terms of the scope when this thing takes off from May 1, 2020?
Yeah, they have made it very clear. It did 5 broad categories, or 5 broad lines as to where the tax is applicable. So it's basically the electronic money transfer, as we know. And therefore, it first starts with the transfer within the same I want to say electronic money issuer. So that's, for example, if you are with, say, Tigo, and you are transferring money from one account to another within the same Tigo, that is the first line. That's the money transfer that you do within the same money issuer, and then electronic money issuer. And then the second one talks about between 2 different money issuers. So, for example, between say MTN and Tigo, or between Tigo and another money issuer. That's the second one. And then the third one looks at from a bank to a mobile money. So that if it's moving from a bank to mobile money, it's applicable. And then the fourth one looks at the other way. If it's from a mobile money platform to a bank, then it's also applicable. And then the fifth one is the one that talks about the digital transfers, or through from a bank to and then it's very specific about that an bank account belonging to an individual to another bank account. And so that's the fifth one. So there are basically 5 main broad areas. When you take these broad areas, there are other breakdowns and interpretations that people will have to. And so that's why we have come out with the guidelines, so that the guidelines will basically explain some of
right now, the guidelines are already in place now.
The guidelines are ready, and we are expecting that from Monday we will be bringing it out. The reason why we haven't completely, issued that completely is that as we engage with the stakeholders, we notice that there are other clarifications that we need to let people know. And then we're also doing FAQs. And so that one, too, as we engage with the stakeholders, we get to know other areas that people were a bit confused about. And therefore, we increase the number of or the additional frequently asked questions. And therefore, we are expecting that in the last week before they go live, all these publications will be
I tried
out.
to get that clarity on the guidelines and the regulations, because there was one portion of the Act that spoke about the Minister of Finance determining the threshold as well. And some people thought to interpret it that, okay, listen, there were still concerns about the 100 Ghana cedis, and then whether we moved to 200 Ghana cedis. That act give the minister the room to say that maybe after second thought, let's move the threshold from 100 Ghana cedis to 200 Ghana cedis?
I think for now, in the exemptions or the exclusions category or section of the Act, they listed about 6 of them, and the first one talks about the limit of the 100. So for now, what we know is that the Act had imposed the limit of 100 Ghana cedis, which means that any transaction that is done up to 100 Ghana cedis will not attract the levy. The other area that the actual limit was not put there was the one regarding the bank-to-bank transfer, where the Act specifically mentioned that the limits for such transactions will be determined by the Minister of Finance, and therefore, as and when the minister indicates as to what the limit is, then for the bank-to-bank transfers, this will be applicable.
That discretion is only restricted to the bank-to-bank transactions.
Yeah, because the first one, in terms of the exemption, starts by saying that the transactions for the mobile money transaction is a limit of 100. In other words, a threshold. I mean, let's say the limit, a threshold of 100. So once you do a transfer of 100, you don't get charged, and then anything above the 100, there's an additional amount above the 100 that is charged. But when it comes to the fifth clause in terms of the applicable charges, is the one that talks about the transfer from a bank, the digital platform or application of an account belonging to an individual from to another. That's where the threshold comes in.
And this will be charged on per transaction. So if, for instance, George Afit today did a transaction of 100 Ghana cedis in the morning at 10 a.m. and at 12 he comes back to do 10 Ghana cedis, the levy would apply on the additional 10 Ghana cedis. It means I've exhausted that limit for the day.
I think, okay, not that I think, but let me just be specific here that when we say that that threshold be given by the Minister of Finance, when the Minister of Finance also gives the threshold, he also indicates what the calculation of the threshold. So, for example, if the Minister of Finance comes out and says that let's say that it says that, okay, it is say 1,000 or say 100, and for the bank to bank transfers, and he says that threshold is per transaction, he will indicate what is per transaction. If it needs to also become a global transaction limit in terms of the system be checking to see whether that is similar to the 100 one, it also be part of what the bank, the Minister of Finance will indicate. But when it comes to the threshold for the 100, which is the mobile money threshold, that one it's clear that we are looking at your overall limit, overall threshold. So that, for example, if you have done 100 cedis with, let's say, the bank-to-bank transfer, or you have done 100 cedis between your transfer from MTN to Tigo, and then you have done another 100 from, or let me put it another simple way. You've done 50 here, you've done 50 on the other side. Then we have to put the 50 together and say, and now you have reached your 100. So the next transaction you will do, irrespective of the service provider, irrespective of the mobile money issuer or electronic money issuer, you will still have to then be charged. So for that one, the threshold is across, and it's also for the whole day. So if you are looking at, say, 12 midnight to 12 midnight, whatever you have done is what the system will take into consideration. But when it comes to the other one, it all depends on the kind of
so I get the clarity that discretion is for just the bank transfers and not the mobile money. And I'm coming back again to this thing about where have we gotten to, and because per engagement with some of the stakeholders, they were still raising issues about the preparedness, and even some were saying that can we take a second look at the May one again. And that's how I was coming back to you, that in terms of the engagement, in terms of the works, how would you rate your preparedness as we speak right now, having all the systems in place, having all the stakeholders being prepared to start charging this levy from May 1?
Okay, so as of today, we have a system in place. The system has been developed. It has taken into consideration the various exemptions, and they have all been, and the variables that are in there, and the necessary algorithms that need to be put in place have all been included in this system. And so, for example, if you are doing a transaction, and it's above 100 or it's up to 100 cedis, Ghana cedis, the system is able to connect to all the EMIs, or the banks, or the telcos for that matter, and be able to determine that you have done this.
When the registration was done with your Ghana card, right?
Yes, it's very important for us to emphasize that one as well, because the unique identification that the system would be using, and for that matter, the ecosystem, just all the other players must be using, is a Ghana card. And today we know that the registration or the Ghana card registration and using it as a unique identity for our telephones have been extended to July. And then the banks also have their own extension. And then once this is completed, then everybody will have the same unique identification or ID that you have on your bank, and you have it on your mobile transaction. Therefore, you're able to do it. But again, since we are starting now, and not everyone has completed this, it's necessary for us as individuals and citizens to take steps to ensure that we update our records in either our banks or our mobile platforms to make sure that we have a unique ID. And so once that unique ID is there, then you will enjoy the exemption. So it is helpful for you to make sure that you
So just coming back to the question about the state of preparedness and
yes,
how you would rate it even now, just
okay,
a week or so to go for this.
So this system is already available, and then the application program interface, which is the APIs, have also been made available. We have had several engagements with the various stakeholders in terms of what we will call the charging entities. When I say charging entities, the EMIs and the banks, and those who will be the telcos who are responsible for charging and then transferring the money to the consolidated fund through the Ghana.gov platform, have all been done. And so what the entities will have to do is to ensure that they have understood, taken all the necessary protocols, and then be able to interface with the system. Currently, the team has been camped in a particular location where anybody who has a challenge as far as getting the integration done is also working with them. And therefore, and I want to take this opportunity, to let all these charging entities know that if you have any challenge, the team is available. We have indicated to them where they are, and for you is for them to be able to ensure that whatever challenge that they have are resolved, and they are able to integrate into the system. But the system is available, the APIs is available, and end-to-end test has been done successfully with a number of transactions that has gone through successfully without any failure. So we are confident that it behoves on the charging entities to ensure that they do the integration. And even though I say it behoves, I also want to emphasize that we are available to work with them to make sure that they are able to integrate.
How is this, and help me out, you use some quite technical jargons, API and end-to-end and all the rest. How is this system working, or is this going to work to ensure that everything is seamless, and how has it been designed and all the rest? Help me out here.
So basically, what we have designed is a kind of a common platform, and so each of the entities and now for the conversation going forward, when I say charging entities, then I'm referring to
telcos, fintechs, banks.
Yes, anybody who are in the.
Thanks for that clarity.
Okay, so when any of these charging entities will have their system connecting to this, when I say connecting to, through the application program interface, which is the APIs, connecting to this platform. And therefore, when you go onto your service provider and you initiate your transaction, and let's say, for example, you are transferring money from your service provider, and assuming your service provider is, say, MTN, and you are doing 1,000 Ghana cedis to an account in, say, a bank. So immediately the system, within several fractions of a second, will have to check and see that account where the money is going. Has it got the same ID as the account from which the money is originating? If it has the same ID, then it means that it's the same George Uyafe that the money is being transferred to. So immediately then it will tell the particular system that don't charge, because by the check that the system has done, this transaction is from the one person to the same person, therefore don't charge. At the same time, and it's not just checking, so this is for one-to-one. And then if it comes to the limit, so you are doing 100 cedis, and you are assuming that this 100 cedis is within the threshold, and therefore it shouldn't charge. At the time when you are doing the threshold, your 100 cedis, that same system, we quickly talk to all the many systems that are connected to it, and be able to see that, oh, you have already done 100 cedis with this other EMI. And therefore, this 100 cedis that under normal circumstances should not be charged, should be charged, because you have already done 100 cedis there. So that's how the system works. And then, for example, one of the exemptions or the exclusions that we have in the law is when it's also transferring to a merchant that is registered with Ghana Revenue Authority for VAT or for income tax. So that's also something that's also inbuilt into the system. So it's also able to check and see that is this a receiver of the money, a merchant registered with GRA for income tax or VAT purposes. If it is, then it immediately it says don't charge. And so that is what this common platform is sitting down doing and checking all these things.
Interesting. That's why you're using all those code names and all the rest for the quite technical stuff as well. I mean, God, how strong and proved they are. I'll be coming back to you to get some clarity on who is behind this platform. Is it GRA and all the rest? And again, how street-proof are this platform to ensure that there isn't double taxation? What does it take to refund and all those things? This is PM Express Business Edition as we talk about the E-levy and the Ghana Revenue Authority. How prepared are they to implement this tax and also ensure that indeed everyone out there appreciates it so that there wouldn't be any double taxation out there, and also ensure that all the loose ends are tied up before this levy takes off. This is PM Express Business Edition. We'll be right back after this break. PM Express Business Edition as we talk about the Ghana Revenue Authority, and they had to take off E-levy, the tax on electronic transfers. And how ready is the Ghana Revenue Authority to implement this? And what about all the concerns out there? Would they be addressed before this levy takes off, or as work in continuum, some might say? Thank you very, very much, Reverend Doctor, for again trying to tie in the loose ends and explain certain things to us. And one thing that I want to get clarity on is that when you go through the act that's supposed to guide the implementation of this thing, it talks about the fact that GRA cannot bring any third party on board to do revenue assurance and then other things as well. This system, this remote app, was it designed by the Ghana Revenue Authority?
I think it's important that the that clause 6.2 that is being referred to is read very properly. So it does say that the Commissioner General shall not, for the purpose of this act, engage a third-party service provider for a fee or commission for the purpose of ensuring revenue monitoring and revenue assurance. So it was very specific on these levels. As far as GRA is concerned, we will always want to be sure that, I mean, we are obeying whatever the law says. And so I want to affirm that as much as the law describes and prescribes this, we will be compliant with the law. and we want to assure Ghanaians that whatever is stated in the law, because as we know, for tax is based upon law, and if the law has also prescribed something for us not to do, we will ensure that we will abide by the law.
But sorry to cut you, but this system that is helping with the collection wasn't designed by GRA, right? It was designed by a third party.
Let me also explain this here. As far as the tax collection is concerned, GRA as an entity, per the Revenue Administration Act, has given that right to be able to look at various ways of developing or collecting the tax. And that is why I'm sure if you look at the tax, it doesn't specifically talk about, and specifically talk about GRA in terms of collection. So for example, today we use Ghana.gov platform for the collection of taxes. So we have a number of such platforms that we use in our system. So nothing stops GRA from using any of these platforms, do you understand me, from as far as collection of the taxes. Because the Act said that for the purpose of this, what do you call it, Act, or for this E-levy. And so that's what I want to emphasize. And I want to emphasize that, as I told you, that GRA will ensure that we are compliant with the law. When it comes back to the question that you asked specifically as to whether the system is developed by
a third party that you paid some money to, of course.
You use Microsoft in your offices.
Yes, sir.
You use so many other softwares in your offices. So whatever software that we are using, we have various systems that we use. We have to make sure that whatever system that we are using, wherever we are engaging, whatever way we are going to use to ensure the tax is implemented, are in compliance with the law.
That's so this was not contracted by a third party where some money was paid to develop this system to aid in the collection of this. That can be even described by some as a revenue assurance measure.
You see, okay, I've heard a lot of such comments.
Yeah.
Let me just say specifically that we have not signed any contracts, with anybody to pay $40 million, as I've heard in some platforms.
They didn't do that. They paid lesser than that.
I said I've not signed any contract.
Okay.
We have not signed any contract for such purposes, and therefore, it is not. What will the right word to use? It's inaccurate for anybody to say that we have signed a contract to pay $40 million to anybody. The point I want to emphasize is the fact that, as an entity, GRA, we use various. We have in-house software developers, even though our plan is to ensure that we have a comprehensive software unit, which is something that is being rolled out. We have other third-party organizations that work with us as far as it comes. So whatever we do it in the name of GRA. What this Act specifically talking about engaging a third party for the purpose of revenue monitoring and revenue assurance. And that's the law.
It's clear on that one.
It's clear that GRA must not, or Commissioner General must not do, and that we will not do.
And so what is happening right now is not a third party doing that.
The important thing you have to understand is the fact that whatever way we are doing it, the ownership is GRA.
I see.
Do you understand me?
In terms of how this thing again is being hosted and all the rest, how...
And don't forget about the fact that we have clearly indicated to you what the Act says as far as what GRA cannot do. So and people should not...
You are compliant with the Act.
Yes. So people should not infer things that are not stated in the Act into the Act. Do you understand? In
terms of how this system is working as well, how localized is the system, some would say, because the concern is also about whether it's a cloud system that is being hosted somewhere. There are issues about national security and also data integrity and all the rest as well.
Again, let me also emphasize that as the Ghana Revenue Authority, we are very conscious about the integrity of the data of you and I. And we know that is, the Revenue Administration Act actually imposes an obligation on the authority to ensure that everything data that we have is kept in confidential, as well as kept in line with the requirements for that data. So, for example, the law allows us to be able to approach any telephone company and to demand data. And therefore, the consciousness of our data integrity cannot be, what is the phrase? It's not something that you can play with. And therefore, we will ensure that whatever we are doing is in line with the Data Protection Act, is in line with the information security policies that we have. And we actually working towards our sort of ISO security policy that we will have. But before we get there, we make sure that everything. So we want to assure the public that we will not use any system that is not in compliance with the information security policies.
You're doing backups as well. So these backups are all internal, or they are being hosted outside the country?
You see, that is the point I want to make it very clear. The question is not a question of whether it is hosted outside the country or hosted inside the country. The question is, the way you are doing the system, is it in compliance with the regulations and the policies of the country? Yes. Is it in compliance with the IT security policy or your general information security policy and the policies of the country? Yes. That is what will have to guide us. And I can assure you that GNRA, in implementing the E-levy, will ensure that the integrity of the data and the security of the data is not compromised in any way.
So this also came at a cost, right? Is it a cost that is going to be borne by the GRA?
In collecting of taxes, the Revenue Administration Act again gives the Ghana Revenue Authority to be able to do up to 3% as a retention from the collection of taxes to be able to for the expenditure towards the collection of the tax. Do you understand that? Okay. So for every expenditure that we will incur, because there's no way you can collect tax without incurring expenditure. Whether your software is developed by you or not, you have to buy servers. You have to, if you buy any off-the-shelf software, you have to pay annual maintenance cost for the software. You have to get people fit on the streets, and all this is cost. Now, the Revenue Administration Act grants unto Ghana Revenue Authority up to 3% of the tax collected for the purposes of administering the tax. And therefore, in collecting the E-levy, Ghana Revenue Authority will be working within that 3% that is granted to Ghana Revenue Authority. As we start this expenditure, even though no revenue has come in now for what do you call it, E-levy, but because we know you collect tax and we know that there is under 3% for us for the tax collection, up to 3%, and when I say up to 3%, it is for the Minister for Finance at any point in time to determine the exact percentage, and therefore our expenditure must always be within that 3%. And for every expenditure that we incur, as far as E-levy is concerned, we will stay within that up to 3% that's allocated to GNRA.
Some months have already gone already, and we understood that the ministry has revised their target as well. In taking off with respect to this levy, what's the clear target are you looking at mobilizing before the end of the year?
Yeah, if you recall, at the inception last year when the budget was read, the targets, the expectation was that we'll be able to collect about 6.9 billion. And because 3 months have gone already, and we are starting in the 5th month, and then also in terms of the other ramifications, we have looked at the figures, and these figures have been revised downwards for the remaining part of the year. And currently, the expectation is that the E-levy should be able to bring in about 4.5 billion Ghana cedis by the end of the year. If you look at it for the from May up to December, then it means that we are looking at roughly something between 400 and 500 million per month. Because if you are looking at 8 months and you are doing, let's say, 500 million Ghana cedis per month, 5 times 8, what do you call it? Because we have for 4 months it's gone already. 5 times 8 will give you about 4 billion. Okay, so that is basically what I'm saying. So this is between 400 and 500 million Ghana cedis per month is what is expected. It's not spread out evenly across them, because definitely when you know that when you are starting, it will be some gaps in the initial stages, and then we expect that it will grow. Again, there has been this lot of talk about the fact that people will start reducing their, and I have engaged some of the countries that people have cited as examples, and I know a specific country that have one-on-one discussion, and they affirm that you saw a quick decline in the initial stages, but then it didn't even take 2 months for you to see the increase. Because sometimes what happens is that people, human beings are generally sometimes rational, even though not always rational. And when it comes to money, there's a lot of rational behavior. And what happens is that, let's say, for example, you are transferring money to somebody in, let's say, Odoko, and you are stationed at your station, in Kokomlemle. And so you have to pay, let's say, 1.5% of, say, 100 cedis. So that's 1 cedi, 50 pesos. And then the other question is, you can decide, okay, let me take transport and travel to Odoko to go and deliver the money to the person. Time. Because you are going to spend about an hour or 2 hours or even more. That's, and then we say time is money. 2, you're going to pay the trotro or the taxi driver or the what do you call the young or what do you call the
Bolt, Uber and all that
driver to be able to get to Odoko. 3, the risk of the travel to Odoko and back. And so these are things that people will take into consideration in make a decision as to whether they have to transfer it, wire it, or they have to.
CJ, the authority has done or worked with several tax types and all the rest. There are some who are saying that or still questioning that 4.5 billion target, that it was not and wouldn't be achievable.
I think that a lot went into the calculations of the tax. Generally, there are various tax types that we have, and before we come out with any estimates, we look at the various variables that are in place at a particular time and look at what these variables and what are the possible movements in terms of these variables. And I think that to a large extent, we believe that these are feasible targets we have set for ourselves based upon the various variables that we have taken into consideration. And we are committed as an organization, a tax revenue authority, to do every possible effort to make sure that we're able to reach that target. You will remember that last year we sat here and you were not too comfortable that we will get to 57. And you did say, I remember that looking at the situation, COVID and all those things. But I'm not saying that these are not important things. Anybody will be oblivious if you don't have to look at such situations. So we'll look at them, but we'll continue to see how best we ensure that we have to reach the target.
You talked about earlier on about working within the act and the law and all the rest and all those issues that you explained about being law compliant, or let me use the word code, tax compliant and all the rest as the authority itself that collects taxes. There's currently a legal suit in court on the implementation of this levy. Have you been served, and what are your lawyers telling you?
Currently, I would say that if if I'm served and when an injunction is put on us, we will comply with what the injunction says. But as of now, I cannot say that we have stopped in terms of our tracks to.
Have you been served with any injunction filed by persons who have issues with this levy and they don't want it to go ahead? Has the authority been served?
I have not been served as at this moment.
As a commissioner, you've not been served. So therefore, everything is going ahead.
Yes.
What are your legal advisors telling you on this? Go ahead, or you could be cited with contempt.
I think that for this one, we as GNRA have not been mentioned in terms of, when I say they have not been mentioned, even though the injunction or the what do you call application does mention a restriction on GRA to progress. It is the duty of the Attorney General, who is the representative of the government as far as the laws and then government agencies are concerned. And therefore, if I am advised by the Attorney General to do any other thing, I will comply with what advice I do receive.
Have they given you advice that CG hold on?
I said if I am advised, so it means that...
They've not done that. Has the authority also tried to seek any advice from them as in, what is the legal advice in going ahead with this, the preparation towards this as well?
I think that, I want to leave the details of whatever conversation that I am having. But definitely, as a CEO of the organization, if I hear of anything that affects the organization, I'll have to do course here and there to find out what is happening and to be able to be advised. So I will not be in the position to mention specifically whatever I have done. But I can only say that if I am advised by the legal authority or the person responsible for advising us to restrain or to from moving forward, we will comply.
But as we speak right now, things are moving on.
Yes,
despite this.
Yes. Yes.
This is PM Express Business Edition as we talk about the E-levy and the Ghana Revenue Authority and what they are doing to ensure that indeed this tax takes off as mandated in the act or what was passed by Parliament. We take a short break and we will be right back. PM Express Business Edition as we talk about the E-levy and how the Ghana Revenue Authority has gone in making sure that from May 1 they can indeed go ahead and implement this tax. And what is the state of preparedness from the stakeholders and even to the public as well when this levy goes ahead? So, CJ, I was trying to talk about how prepared the authority is, the public. There are still concerns about double taxation. And help me out on that because that's also a concern out there.
I think that we must understand the issue about trying to bring all of us to contribute a little to be able to help develop our dear country. And that has been one of the underlying reasons for the E-levy. And it's important for us to understand that with the E-levy, everybody in any corner will be able to contribute a little. And then when it comes to the issue about double taxation, you will find out that for us in Ghana, we have even gone ahead to introduce some elements that have not been done in other countries who have introduced similar electronic money transaction levies. For example, the one innovative thing that has been introduced is the fact that when you transfer the money to a merchant that is registered for income tax or VAT,
as a business,
you the one who is transferring, you are exempted from the tax. And so in doing that, what you are trying to do is that merchant who is paying the VAT and paying the income tax can attract those who are also transferring to do more business with him. So we are giving him more business. Then at the same time, we are telling the one who is not registered for VAT. So for example, your plumber, your electrical contractor who is not registered for VAT, when you transfer your money to him for 2,000 to go and fix the wires, you pay E-levy if he is not registered for VAT or income tax. So you have to advise him that If you want me to transfer money to you, and I don't want to pay the 1.5%, please go and register with Ghana Revenue Authority.
Yeah.
Then on the other hand, the one who is registered already so gets. So we try to eliminate that. And number two, for those who are also tested, for example, I transfer money to some people as a merchant or as an organization, and then I end up paying the E-levy. The E-levy is also an expenditure that's allowable, so it's going to become part of your expenditure in your P&L. So at the end of the day, when you finish doing your accounts, your profits will be lower than it should have been because of the expense that you have made on E-levy. So when we are calculating your profit income tax on your bottom line, again, you have benefited from there. So these are things that people must understand. But there definitely will be some points where it will appear, for example, if I transfer to my son, and my son also transfer, then the argument is that I have paid. And then my son, maybe he's a student, he has also paid. For those small situations, it is something that the aim is for us, all of us, to contribute a lot. So if maybe for just a joke, if you see that sometimes we also pay tithes. When I pay tithes to my son, and my son also pay tithes.
That is not a taxation. But just in 30 seconds on that one, so if I get from you, from the stakeholder perspective and from GRA as well, you are ready to implement this tax for me one?
Yeah, as I said, the system is ready. Now, the important thing for us is for all the EMIs or the charging entities to ensure that they configure or ensure that they have their APIs to be able to talk to the APIs of our system. And as I said at the beginning, I want to use this opportunity to admonish that they all must ensure these people are available. You know, when it comes to projects like this, sometimes it takes very long hours of dedicated work and commitment to be sure that you get. So we want to encourage them that the people are available to ensure that whatever help they need to be able to get their systems plugged in to ensure that it can be done before the 1st of May.
Recently, there were some amendments judging from budgets and all in terms of the taxes. That has come with a different way of implementing these taxes for businesses. And some are complaining about the reassessment that you've done and the taxes are hitting them so hard. What do you say about it? Because judging from the current environment, COVID, and some are still yet to get on their feet, some were pleading that could GRA had delayed or pushed the Ministry of Finance to hold on with some of these amendments.
I'm glad you talk about this. And we're also not talking only about E-levy, because sometimes people also think that all that we are saying is E-levy, but E-levy is only one other aspect. But we are looking at all the other aspects. And you see, as a government, you realize that the government is doing both sides in terms of trying to find ways of cushioning. So even though we are talking about some of the areas that seems to bite on people as far as the tax is concerned, there are also areas, for example, the waiver of interest and penalties, which have been extended to June of 2022, when it was already ending. So people should also know that the government is a listening government, and also trying to, or GRA for that matter, is also trying to see ways of cushioning them. Not only that, the vehicle income tax that was suspended in 2021 have also been extended as well. Now coming to the other ones that have also changed, if you take the things like the withholding tax on the gold exports, again that has also been reduced from the 3% that was previously being charged to 1.5% at the moment. So this was also part of the new policies that came out. And then when you come to the threshold for the VAT, now you know that we're looking previously up to a threshold of 200, and now we have moved it up to 500. And then some people will argue that because they are now in the bracket, but you see, when you go into those brackets, you also have the opportunity to also get the input tax. So at the end of the day, you also benefit compared to those who are doing the 3% flat rate on the based upon the turnover limit. Now, in terms of people who are complaining that we have come to audit them and their turnover has gone up. Yeah. It's not an intention or intentional thing to increase.
They woke up with a letter from GRA and everything has gone up substantially.
No, the reality is that sometimes people's turnover go up, and then when the turnover goes up, they are supposed to pay more tax based upon that turnover. And once you do a tax, tax payment is not easy for anybody. And therefore, when the turnover goes up and you're supposed to now move into a higher bracket or take pay, then they start complaining. But like I said, these ones exist for us to also mobilize more revenue. But again, we still have other incentives. For example, you know about the income tax brackets, which have also been changed. And they also have been changed so that the lower people who were previously paying will also now be exempted. And even for those of us who are also higher, depending upon your bracket, how you fall in, you see that there's a slight reduction in the tax that you pay. So we have to do both sides. If you go to the extent of just making sure that you reduce everything, at the end of the day, will not get the revenue.
But Commissioner, some business concern here is that they feel that it's the same businesses out there who are being heaped on these tax. These businesses are tax compliant, but there are still a lot of enterprises out there that they are not paying taxes. And they expect that some of these relief should be granted to them. So it's the same businesses out there, they are paying taxes always, and a lot of things have been heaped on them.
It's not necessarily the case. These people, those who are very compliant, and they also take opportunity to file their taxes, there are also reliefs that comes to them. And also sometimes, and I have seen in my tenure here, I have seen a number of firms where even sometimes doing the audit, you will end up finding that in his provisional assessment and the tax that he has paid, he has actually overpaid. And I've seen checks being issued or accounts being credited with tax overpayment or refunds. And so it's important for people to understand that when you file tax, you don't file tax only for you to be able to pay more. Sometimes in your filing, you rather gain. For example, if you talk about the reliefs on like you and I, if you have never filed your tax, you don't indicate that your parents are alive, and therefore you're supposed to get relief for your parents who are alive. You don't indicate that you have 3 children. So, for example, if I am blessed and then I have my 2 parents alive, and then for another person I don't have the premium, but because of that I'm paying for their upkeep. The law says that because I'm paying for those 2 parents who are alive, I must get a relief.
Okay.
And they will only know if I file.
I see.
But people will not file.
We've passed Q1 already. How's revenue doing?
I think that you will expect within the budget. There's also portions allocated for E-levy and some other. But generally, there is a substantial improvement. If you look at the first quarter of 2022, we have done about 25% year-on-year increase. And you remember that last year we did 25.6% year-on-year increase, which was the highest year-on-year increase. And therefore, we have done 25% year-on-year increase. That is between the first quarter and the last quarter. So we see that there is, and actually it's also picking up from the first month to the second month to the third month. And therefore, we see that we'll be able to come very close to our target. Again, I will not want to start commenting on this at this moment. I want us to wait and get closer. And then when you get closer and we meet again, then we can talk about it.
There was the recent levy or tax on, is it the online tax that affected commerce and all those things? That one, and also the tax on rent and all the rest, how are they doing?
I think that's also very important. People have said that we are concentrating just on E-levy. And it's important that you are bringing this one out, that we are doing there are a number of initiatives. And so as I speak now, more than 100 non-resident online entities have registered on our new online platform. And this is just, we are not even done a month yet. We know we started at the beginning of April, and we have over 100 companies registered. And so we expect that we are going to see an increase in that. We've also done about 200 customers, taxpayers, who have also registered on the E-VAT. And then we also started piloting on the E-VAT. So once it also goes successfully, we hope that we'll be able to move away from the current manual VAT that we are doing. As far as the property rate and the rent tax is concerned, the various structures have been put in place, and we expect the take-off, as the minister announced, at the end of this month. And so for property, both rate and rent, and for E-VAT, e-commerce, e-gaming, they are all taken off in terms of the registration. And therefore, and you remember in the last statement that the Minister of Finance issued, he mentioned that at the end of the month, they all take off.
So April, May 1 is also taken off.
Yes.
And you are ready, the systems are in place, everything is in place?
Yes, systems are in place. And as I said, for example, over 100 people have already registered on the e-commerce platform. The E-VAT, over 200 taxpayers are registered during the pilot. And so these are things that are going on quite smoothly for us so far.
The oil marketing companies and those extractive oil marketing, oil producing firms who are still trying to evade taxes and all the rest, have you got around that challenge now, or are you still doing necessary investigations to deal with them?
One thing I'm glad about is, glad to say, is the fact that we have been able to put in structures that ensures that going forward we don't see any more of such defaults. And a lot of the structures we have put in place is that, for example, now we require bank guarantees instead of insurance.
For the oil marketing companies?
Marketing companies. And in fact, for most of even our rescheduling of taxes, we require bank guarantees. Again, if you also default, the system automatically blocks you. Number 3, for all the insurance companies that have also defaulted in their guarantees, we've gone after them as well. And those who are also at the court we are prosecuting, many of them have come, and some of them have done the rescheduling, and they are handling their obligations.
Would that freeze that prosecutorial action, or are you still going ahead?
No, as part of the prosecution, if the judge says that go and agree on a settlement, if the settlement is agreed and the guy is able to honor what has been done, then you don't have to go on with prosecution. But if you go and he's not able to, let's for example, we say go and settle, and you come and say, oh, give me 34 months, and it's not acceptable. Automatically we go back to the court and tell the court that we are not able to settle. So then the court will have to now go ahead, and then if it's an imprisonment or looking for your assets to dispose them of to settle, they go ahead. So there are a number of them who have come like that based upon the court. But these are all decisions taken at the courts. And so it becomes part of the court prosecution process. And therefore, if he fails to honor his obligation, you only go back to the court and carry on from where you left off.
What about the extractive industry, the oil extractive firms, those who are trying to get out and not pay the necessary? What is the status of those engagements that you were having with them?
Yeah, there are some of them that I will say that have taken some of the cases to courts and international arbitration, and so we are pursuing the process as it may be. There are others too that we have been able to come to some settlement agreements
to pay them,
and they are paying. So basically, whatever and there are some other investigations that we are also doing on some of them, and we hope that before the end of the third quarter, we'll be able to come to some conclusion. So that's also another area that we expect some revenues from.
Commissioner General, finally on the Tax Advisory Board, I know you're working with the Ministry of Finance. It has delayed a little bit, and some businesses are worried about that. Are we making progress?
Yes, we are making quite good progress. There are about 5 categories of personnel that you need to have on the board, and it includes the chairman of the board. It includes nominations from the Institute of Taxation, the nominations from the Chartered Institute of Accountants, the nominations from the private sector, and the nominations from GRA. So there are 5 main categories. And as I speak, most of the people have been identified, The others that are yet to be identified are being worked on, and we expect that before the end of the third quarter, we will be able to put in place the Revenue Appeals Board. And I want to emphasize that it is good for all of us, good for us as a revenue authority, and good for them as taxpayers, because at the end of the day, you have a shorter avenue to be able to go and appeal rather than going through the court process. When I say the court process, I'm not referring to the criminal prosecutions that we are doing. I'm talking about the normal civil case where somebody who doesn't agree with you goes to court. And I know cases that people have gone to court as far back as November. And as we speak today, the case has not been called, not even the first time. You understand me? So if the tax is due and the person is disputing, he's spent from November to this time, is almost 6 months.
Yeah.
And the case has not yet been called. So when it's happening like that, automatically, you don't get your revenue quickly. So if the tax appeals board is there, instead of the taxpayer going to court, we will have gone to the appeals board. The appeals board will have called the case earlier, and then we can all move forward, both for the taxpayer and for us as a revenue authority.
Commissioner General, I thank you so much for your time. I appreciate so much. And this has been engaging the Commissioner General of the Ghana Revenue Authority. And I know the debate will still go on in the offices and the homes in terms of how prepared are we and the smooth takeoff of this levy. And I appreciate your time so much. This has been PM Express Business Edition as we talk about the E-levy and the Ghana Revenue Authority and how prepared they are to implement this tax. I know the questions will still be out there, but as he says, the process goes on. They will do more education, and education. And that has been PM Express Business Edition. Have a great day.